and probably then you'll be successful. I'll just talk about Postbank for only 5 minutes. I think they're enough. Postbank was a challenged bank, more like a parastatal, and more like, there is a word I've avoided in the entire presentation because HR loves it, it's a buzzword, culture. So if you realize I haven't mentioned the word culture, okay, the culture wasn't fit for business success. So our journey mainly started with, the starting point was a restructuring exercise. For the organization, make it fit, define what the organization should be like in order to succeed, whether it can speak to tomorrow. Of course, structures don't last long, unfortunately, today, because of things you've practiced over the years and deal with extreme emotions. How you come out determines really. All branches were full of soldiers, full of customers, full of, you couldn't even, my ED told me, has a friend, and the friend told him, I love saving with Postbank. Do you know why? That my savings is there, you can go and check out the account. Do you know why I save with Postbank? When you save with Postbank, it's very difficult to access your money. There were no cards, a queue for 6 months. So there were so many issues. Yeah, and if you go there, the banking hall is full, there is a queue on the street. If you ask for a card, you can't get a card. So once the money is there, it is safe, you'll never access it. So it was a funny comment, but also now we had to figure out how to change all that. Of course, you start different things. You move the customers out of the banking halls, you do channels, self-service channels, it's expensive, you have to invest in technology, you start a digital journey so that you can automate as much as you can. And whenever you automate, you get more hands and less human beings. That is what happens. So you realize that you start growing revenue without increasing the number of people that you have actually in the organization. So really, that is what has happened. But within that, of course, you face a lot of challenges that you have to deal with. I'll stop here. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Julius. Given Julius's demeanor when I first met him, he looked much like a fumbler, and then he spoke like he went to St. Mary's Chisubi. So I was pleasantly surprised. But I think we all agree with a lot of what he has shared in terms of the changing workplace, the stories and the things he referred to. I remember at one time I was a certain kind of employee who would show up 2 times a week at Prudential. They were being accommodative at that time. They still are. And so the conversations he has shared are going to lead us into what would be a very interactive session as we draw to the tail end of this particular event. And still, we are sticking with matters to do the changing workplace and employee well-being. I was thinking about how hello is the most used word in the world. But every time I'm in a meeting, I think, can you see my screen? Is now the most used word in the world. Because in any virtual meeting you're in, can you see my screen? So, but to lead this conversation, we have with us Pamela Natamba. She's a partner at PwC, and she looks after the people agenda at PricewaterhouseCoopers. She will be joined by Grace Nshemeire, the Chief Operating Officer at Private Sector Foundation, and also joined by Uthman, the Senior Partner at PwC. So, and also our keynote speaker will also be part of the panel. So as they usher themselves to the front seats here, we'll just do a short video break, yes.
We are the Molondos.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been married 10 years.
No, I actually didn't think I would last 10 years.
I believe at 60 we will be able
Yeah.
to afford any healthcare that is needed, because we had planned very well early. We had
Yeah.
invested in the right things with the right people.
At this age, to be able to be healthy enough to enjoy your wealth.
And like the old adage goes, your health
Is your wealth.
Get a life and health insurance policy with Prudential and secure your health and financial future today.
Okay. Maybe I just use. Can you hear me? No. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Peter, for the kind introduction, and I'd like to add my voice to thank Julius for the very wonderful keynote speech. I do believe that he touched a number of critical points and a subject that is very dear to our hearts as HR practitioners and leaders in this room. We've been joined by Grace. You'll ask yourself why PSFU, but we all know that PSFU is a focal point for the private sector, and they really do support the private sector from the perspective of advocacy, capacity building, and therefore if we're having a conversation around HR, what we need to be doing as employers, where do we see it going in future, we do believe they are a critical part of this conversation and should be with us this morning. So Grace, you're welcome. And since we have not heard your voice since morning, I will give you 2 to 3 minutes to make some comments reflecting on what Julius Uthman Tete spoke to earlier this morning, before we then open it up to our members for comments and questions. So I would ask that if you have any comments, questions, you do prepare them. I'll come to you in a bit. Over to you, Grace.
Thank you very much. Our host, the MD of Prudential, my fellow panelists, the HR community, our media people present, all protocol observed. I'm delighted to be here today to talk about people. I don't think we do enough of that as a country. So really excited about the presentation made by our keynote speaker, who spoke about VUCA. But the reason I actually joined PSFU was about employment for the youth and women. And I'm glad that we are here talking about people and employment. Why? Because every year, 1 million Ugandans turn 18 years and therefore join the workforce. And you people sitting here know how many you absorb every year. So we have a huge number of unemployed youth out there. We have over 1.1 million businesses, SMEs, 50 of which do not even see their third birthday. So half of those go broke or bust. So unemployment keeps being recycled. So we are lucky that we have you, because you look after those who are able to earn a living. And I think, given that the nature of our environment is VUCA-ish, which the keynote speaker spoke about, how do we therefore maintain and retain and attract the best talent? In our Vision 2040, one of the strengths that's highlighted for Uganda is our youthful force, our youthful labor force. And yet on the other side, when the Vision 2040 talks about our weaknesses as a country, is the unskilled labor and attitude to work. So I'm looking at the HR community and asking, how can you help us train our force in Uganda to be the best talent on the African market? In my previous career, I had regional, global roles. I looked after Africa, and I can tell you we have among the best talent. When they are trained and motivated, we have among the best talent on this continent. But it's Kenyans, Zimbabweans, and South Africans that end up getting regional roles. I used to work for the brewery. Right now, I can tell you the brewery has about 3 marketing directors in 3 different African countries who are Ugandan. And I used to, when I was listening to the keynote speaker, I was very excited because I used to work with the Global Guinness team in London. I was the only African on that team representing Africa. So, and it was interesting because when he was talking about the diversity, the inclusivity, I think the 2 big variances that we have with the rest of those countries is race and sexual orientation, but the other things apply to us. But with that view, I used to proudly say that Ugandans over-index, because in the Diageo community, Uganda is not one of the biggest countries in terms of sales value or volume in Africa. But we had more talent out in the different countries as expatriates. In fact, Kenya got concerned because we had more Ugandans going to London, going to Nigeria, going to Ghana, going to Ethiopia. Because when we nurture our people, they fire. So HR, please, do we have development plans for our people to make sure we position them to take on those responsibilities? And you know the amazing thing is that wherever each one of us went, we pulled a Ugandan. When Marco Chiti went to Tanzania, his marketing director was a Ugandan. So are we developing our people? There's talk of evolution of technology. Are we leveraging tools like LinkedIn? They have very great training programs there. And especially because our young people, the average of a Ugandan right now is 16 years because of our population dynamics. So they are techno-savvy, they are on the phone, they're on the internet. These trainings of 2 hours, 3 hours in a room, concentration levels are very low. But put them on the phone, put them on the computer, and they will learn. So are we leveraging these skills as we look at the evolution of technology? There is growing complexity of product skills that our keynote speaker talked about. Again, that was powerful for me because I've worked with people and I've also led teams of people who are saying, I want to work 3 days, like he was saying, a week. I have another hustle, and they're honest. I have another job that I want to do the other 2 days, but they are brilliant. There are those who are saying, I want to work from 9 to 6. I don't want to come in at 8. Can I stay longer? Come in late. There are those who are saying, I want to work from home 2 days a week. Post-COVID, I think the expectations of our workforce are changing. The question to HR and the entire business community, are we evolving to meet the needs of our employee workforce? The other question I have is around talent management. Sometimes, and I have several HR friends, my question is, do we have training calendars, development plans? Are we looking at our personal and professional development? Private Sector Foundation did a study, and in the skilling areas, and one of the surprising things from our business community, some of our members were not willing to take on these millennials as employees. issues, attitude, lack of soft skills. There were those that were saying, yeah, I have a machine. The guy is an engineer, but he's never interacted with a machine. He's going to blow up my equipment. So we've got skills and governance training to actually upskill or give these 1,000 young people soft skills. And I guess for me the question is, we hire people, they impress us during the interview, then you find the first 3 months they struggle. Have we set them up for success? Especially the millennials. Those who've been working for 3-5 years sometimes are able to come in and adapt, but the ones who are first-time job seekers need a bit of special attention. There was talk of inclusivity, which is the buzzword in the entire HR community and business community. I think I briefly mentioned about the fact that we have a few variances, but I was shocked. In one of, and I've worked for some of the best companies in the world, I hired someone who had a mohawk as a hairstyle. And it created a crisis in the entire business. Someone took photos, sent them to me. What kind of people are you hiring? These are the millennials. We wanted to connect with the millennials, actually. That was one of the objectives. And I was like, but these are the people we want to talk to. I can tell you that when I was going to interview for my job at Private Sector Foundation, someone called me and told me, do not go there with your dreads. Hey, you have to dress in a particular way. I guess for me the question is inclusivity. What does it mean for you? Is it about personalities? There are people who are said to be, that one can't fit in the banking profession. They are too loud, they are noisy, the dress code. What is inclusivity for you? Is it religion? What are our biases as an organization to hiring people? And I mentioned that team that I worked with before that was not really African, but it was quite diverse. We had a Finnish, we had an Indian, we had a British, and we had me. It was one of the, I think, most productive teams I'd ever worked with, because everyone brought a different nuance from their culture. The Indian was very good at math, numbers, Excel sheets, anything. The Finnish was very creative. The British was like the joker. So, you know, you would sit down as a team and have so much fun working together that you'd even forget your skin color. So I guess for me, the question about inclusivity, are we seeing beyond the biases? It's not that it doesn't apply to us. It actually does apply to us. I gave you an example of the Mohawk. We have our own biases. So I think without really stealing the time from the panel, I will pause there.
Thank you so much, Grace. And I think Grace makes very interesting points. And talent management, again, is a critical subject, as you'll hear from what she's saying, in terms of exposure, you know, providing a platform for our people to be able to shine. I think that is something that is very critical. Our young people are innovative. They get bored so easily. You don't want to have them in a box, because they'll then, in 6 months, they'll be telling you they want to join another department and see what's happening in there. So you make a very valid point of allowing people to be exposed and take opportunity of what's available for them to then interact with other cultures and the whole inclusion and diversity arrangement. So I'm going to open it up to you. You've been quiet all morning. I know there's already a comment that is coming through from one of us, Mr. Fred Mwita, who is Head of Human Capital. Umeme, if you'll just give your comments, question, and then we'll just have a free hands up type of arrangement, and we'll come to you with a microphone. Fred, over to you.
Good morning, colleagues. Well, I think this is more of like a bullet on my head. I wasn't prepared, but nevertheless, I'll try and speak from the heart and from my head and mind. I want to thank the panelists, and I also want to thank very much the CEO for Postbank for the insights that he shared to us. But I really want to talk from a very, very practical, experiential perspective. The workplace has changed significantly. And from where I sit, I think I've seen 95, if not 100% of it to date. But before I share those insights very briefly, I don't know how many of you read international journals on human resources and the changing human resources perspectives globally, and look into that into our own perspective in Uganda, maybe East Africa and Africa. And I love the perspectives. Why are South Africans or West Africans or back home Kenyans more assertive in the international arena than ourselves? I think that's a question that we have to ask ourselves. I've been asked that from this forum. Why are you working in Uganda as a HR practitioner? You're a foreigner. My answer to that was, don't keep your door shut. Opportunities are wide open. Why do you lock yourself with a big lock and key and cry and procrastinate? Open up your wings. Opportunities are there. Nevertheless, this morning I was reading the BBC. Something caught my eye. Virgin Atlantic had a very serious corporate day. And they told everybody else, make sure you come to work in a suit. Make sure you come to work and address your colleagues by their job titles. If it is Mr., it must be Mr. If it has to be Mrs., it has to be Mrs. so-and-so. If it has to be doctor, it has to be Dr. so-and-so. Ensure that you strictly adhere to the corporate etiquette. Make sure that your phones are switched off, no social media the whole day. And the experience was, at the end of the day, everybody said I had a very long day because people couldn't just cope with that work environment. The workplace has changed. When I worked in telco, I was the first HR guy to employ a dreadlocked person in our marketing sales team, and people pointed fingers at me. And 6 months down the line, that dreadlocked guy was taking his boss's job because he was a super performer on the job. I was the first guy to let people come to work in shorts if they're working on back end in the call center. And people laughed at me. Why do you do these things? Why do you force people to come to work in a necktie, suited, and they're working the back office? Nobody sees they don't have any customer interface in the call center. And these are 18, 24-year-olds. So I told you, if you can come to work in shorts, your back end, and do your stuff and go home, so be it. I got a lot of resistance, but I stamped my foot, and it worked. Why do I say this? HR has evolved, HR has changed. We need to be strategic and drive our agenda. We need to move from being told what to do to understanding our businesses and prescribe solutions that really drive business efficiencies. The workplace has changed drastically from coming to work 8 to 5, and I thank God maybe it was an eye-opener to every other organization, to people wanting to work from anywhere for as long as you can measure their productivity. In my team today in Uganda, I have people I've not seen for 1 whole year, but they work for me. We interact every other second, either on social media or any platform, and they're extremely productive, and some of them got hefty bonuses last year. But I've never seen them. But could this have happened a few years back? Never. People say, I have to see you here 8 to 5, and that is what the job dictates. That has changed. Millennials are coming to the job. They have their ways of working. Are we adapting to that? I've seen youngsters come to work, and when they are employed, the first thing they get on their desk is a desktop. It's a turn-off. They've been in university with their laptops, with their gadgets, and what you give to them on the first day at work is a desktop. They wouldn't stay. The look and feel that we give at the workplace is a very big either turn-on or turn-off to employees. Our onboarding initiatives to the new workforce that comes in. But at the end of the day, as the workplace changes, we keep saying, where is the role of HR? Most of us are still in the old school of thought, the traditional way of your CEO prescribing and telling you what to do, but not you co-partnering with your CEO to prescribe business solutions that enhance efficiencies and growth to shareholder value propositions. So we either are part of the problem in this change, or we are in our complacency zones and we are happy with what is going on, and we are not challenging the status quo. It is as simple. I don't think I can put it better than that. Finally, I really want to ask the organizers of these surveys to be very wary of organizations as well. They are phenomenal in learning from each other. But as we go into this survey, I personally would like to ask if we can either group the survey into businesses or find a more innovative way of ranking organizations. Why do I say this? There's no way you're going to rank organization X whose turnover rate is 1 shilling with organization Y whose turnover rate is 10 shillings. These are two different worlds, two different dynamics, two different thinkings and affordability to deliver key issues to employee welfare and engagement. Some of these bigger organizations are very fledged centers of excellence that other organizations don't have the luxury of. You cannot clump them together. They're not thinking the same. It's good to learn best practices holistically on a global perspective, but in terms of ranking, I tend to think it is quite disadvantageous to some organizations. And it tends to be very, very demotivating when very hard-working organizations do some very greater stuff and they're even hardly mentioned in the surveys. So let's find a way of demystifying that and finding a level playing ground where everybody is accommodated in the survey. Apologetically, it may be very sensitive, but that's my own disclaimer. Apologies if I've touched some deep souls and scratched some wounds, but it is what it is and it has to be addressed. Then finally, very finally, I don't know how many minutes you gave me, you didn't tell me, so I'm just managing my own time. 15 seconds. HR, as HR practitioners, we need to add value to ourselves. Read, enrich yourselves with the latest technology, the latest trends to understand your businesses so that you can drive the HR agenda and the business perspectives in a very strategic manner. And if we do that, I believe we'll crack the nuts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fred. I will not try to paraphrase or recap your points. I think they were very clear. And your comments and feedback around the ranking of the organization is well taken. I shall send you my son, who is keen to work in shorts. Thank you very much. So any other comments, questions? Peter, there's a hand on the second table right there in front, a lady in brown.
Thank you so much. Rose Taremwa is my name. I work for an international organization. I just want to do just a few comments. I was very excited about the presentation by Julius. Mr. Kaketo Julius, thank you so much. I think you were very practical, and most of the things you talked about is what we deal really with on a daily basis. I also thought that you're such a balanced CEO. While you spoke, I was thinking, is it possible to organize CEOs in Uganda and maybe you talk to them? On my table, we also wondered whether you have a discipline area in HR, because we're thinking, oh, the head HR for your bank must be up to her game or his game, you know. Thank you so much for that brilliant presentation. One of the comments from your presentation, you know, is about hybrid and remote work. I think maybe the developed countries, you know, came in earlier, even before COVID, to know that For someone to deliver, they don't need to be at your door at 8. You don't need to have a clock-in system, clock in and clock out. I work in an environment where I've been working virtually for 2 years before we had flexible arrangements, but they were not so strict, and we didn't use them as we should. At the moment, everyone works virtually as long as your job can support you to be offline. And we are measured against output. So you do your performance appraisals and you set your objectives, and it's about what you have produced. So they don't monitor when you work, where you work from, where you are, and all that, the hows and wheres and all that. I think even in our businesses, even in private sector, I'm sure there are positions where you can have people work from everywhere. You don't need them to come at work. And you'd be amazed at the advantages and benefits that come with that. For me to know that I work in an environment where I am with my children around me, if my job, composition can allow me to do that, I will really produce much more than, waking up and going into the traffic and all the stress and talk of well-being initiatives. I think we just need to be dynamic, even in Africa, that certain things can work for us. That said, that will not work for every position, but I am sure we have so many positions in these organizations where someone can work from wherever. IT people, you don't need them around. We are supported online, you have your computer, someone logs in and helps you with issues. So I think we need to just, if I may borrow the word, think outside the box and also embrace change and innovation. The other, I want to comment on talent management. I know Grace and Julius have talked about it. When you think about it from an employer's perspective and the job market that Grace has hinted about, especially in Uganda, with the levels of unemployment, they're actually alarming, I think, to me, the levels of unemployment that we have. I think employers also, we have a bit of a weakness to actually think that if Rose doesn't do the job, Julius will do it, So we don't focus so much on retention and how to keep people and how to reward people better. That's why we have poor salaries, scales and grades on the market. Ugandans are poorly paid, very poorly paid in most organizations. Because sometimes it's not for every organization, but I want to believe that some say, if Deborah doesn't do it, another person will do it, so we don't really mind. I think we also need to change, perspectives around that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose. I know we are getting many comments and not questions from the audience, but maybe just to ask our panelists to make a comment, because I realize the point around flexibility, inclusion, is one that keeps coming back. Uthman, I don't know what your thoughts would be around the subject of flexibility, inclusion, what is inclusion to us? How much is too much? It's a sensitive subject, but some comments would be appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, Pamela, and thank you to all our panelists and the audience. Absolutely, inclusiveness is something that Julius has spoken to from an experience point of view, and Grace has also spoken to it from experience. And I think for me, that experience, what that teaches us is to question our own views about inclusiveness. Even within our society in Uganda, we tend to see it as being fairly homogeneous. But in actual fact, it's not that homogeneous. Our workplaces are not that homogeneous. Our staff levels are going to vary. So if you think about a government type of environment where you have employee scales from U1 to U10, for example, the needs of your lowest level employees are going to be very different from those of your higher level employees. When we're talking about the current escalating cost environment, it's going to affect employees differently. So inclusiveness is such a wide topic, and it's not just about minority groups. It's also about the assumptions that we make about work, about employees, and therefore I think it's something that is important for all of us to bear in mind all the time. The conversation has been framed from a Western world perspective, and therefore we tend to view it that way, but I think we need to interpret that conversation for our own society, and then apply the lessons to our workplace. And the question is simple. How do you get the best out of employees? It's also a tough one because it requires us to question accepted notions about what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, and so on and so forth. So I think it's an evolving conversation. It's one that we need to keep on our radar as business executives, as HR executives, and continue to learn from one another and from experience, because I don't think anybody can say that they've got the magic answers to these questions. I think what we do know is, as Julius mentioned, we need to understand how do we bring the best out of individuals. We had a work culture, and then we have to be careful not to stretch this too much. We had the work culture in the 80s, and the society culture in the 80s, where if we lost a close friend or relative, we would take a week to bury. And during that whole week, we'll be in Lumbe. So I lose a dear one, and I go for Lumbe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The whole week is gone. We need to be careful about what does inclusiveness mean. Are we going back to those days where we say, okay, in your culture, you take 2 weeks to bury, that's it. In your culture, you take 3 weeks for a wedding, that's it. We need to be careful about these notions so that we don't lose the plot along the way. We don't throw, as they say, the baby out with the bathwater. So I think very difficult, again, to make very specific comments, but I think the general message is that we must identify what does it mean for us. We must question the assumptions that we make about work, about workers, or about our colleagues, and at the end of the day, answer the questions that bring the best out of the people. In fact, in the Western world today, we need to be very careful because this is coming to us. Highly credible and reputable companies are struggling to attract talent. People are saying, I actually do not want to come and work in a 9-to-5 environment at all. Or, I will not work for your organization because, and this has been going for some time, because you carry out research on animals. And I don't want to be associated with that. Because you're not ethical. So employees are becoming very discerning about who they want to work with, who they want to be associated with. So the inclusiveness agenda becomes much wider than simply saying, you can come in with a particular hairstyle or a particular dress code. And I think for me that is really where the topic would be, that I think would want us to look at that particular issue of inclusiveness.
Okay, thanks Uthman. Peter, there's a question from the gentleman here. There are a number of questions. I know we are doing badly on time. So I'll take that question and a comment from the back. And a gentleman here. Please use 1 minute each. 1 minute.
All I need is 45. So good morning. Mr. Keketo, nice seeing you again. You were at my premise just a few days ago. Shemiride, nice seeing you again. Uthman, assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And Pamela, nice having you. So my name is Paul Rwangandagije. I am the Chief People and Culture Officer for Next Media, head of HR. So Molly reached out to me and told me we were going to have a conversation and about trends, innovations, and how to share inspirations regarding post-pandemic Uganda, in a nutshell. So I want to go back to my organization with some action points, something that I can share with them. So I have a couple of questions that perhaps I could get answers to, so that when I go home to the Next Media Park, I'm able to say, this is the value I have returned with. I would love to see the HR fraternity in this room having a conversation on employer value proposition. I'm 42 years. I have too many tattoos. And most of my people are in this room, and I've been their head of HR for 9 years. I hold 2 master's degrees, a postgrad, 1 postgrad, 2. I'm tired of school. Why should I work? Why should those people come work for you? Now, let's have a conversation. Why should somebody work for you? What is it? Why should someone enter into a contract of service for you? I would love to have a conversation on employer value proposition.
You have less than half a minute.
My second question is program exchange. I would request for an additional 30 seconds if you'd permit me, Pamela, because I don't want to go back empty-handed. Program exchange. Egypt and Uganda are currently undertaking an exchange program for employees. Companies engaging with Uganda, taking people to Egypt, Egypt bringing people here. How, PSFU, for example, Private Sector Foundation, Uganda, do we have a program where we exchange, where we have people come work in different organizations? We had this conversation last year with the MD. Where is that? Why are we in this room and we haven't thought of having an exchange program? Uganda has the best talent in the world. This is scientifically proven. Yes, we are number one on the drinking line, tunywa nnyo. We drink a lot, but we have the best talent in the world. But how is it that we are having culture issues as a country? Can we think of exchanging programs?
And your last question, Paul?
My last question is the occupational hazards of an HR practitioner. Are we having enough conversation about the mental health of HR practitioners? We are responsible for the mental health of the people we lead. Is there a conversation anywhere in this room, in your organizations, where you have addressed the mental health of HR practitioners? I would love to have some answers to that. Then me, I can go home.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Let me take the question from the gentleman at the back. There's a gentleman, there's a lady here, and the other gentleman. Then I'll give 2 minutes to each panelist so that we can close it there.
Thank you. The gentleman at the back is called Waspo Moses, the team leader at Swift Minds, one of the best firms, HR firms in the country. My question is around the work politics. Mr. Kaketo said by the time he joined Postbank, and by the way, I went to Postbank, this one which is at, is it NASA? I was served very well. I saw some automation there, so kudos. So I just wanted to ask, how did you deal with the work politics? Because the places where I've worked with the most work politics are those ones where everyone is trying to put in their relative and all that, and these guys feel untouchable. And this is a very big problem in Uganda. So how did you deal with that? Probably you could help some of us here who are leading teams and someone is shoving their relative. You are an HR, but someone is saying you must hire this person. You have to hire this person because I'm your boss. And the HR probably will not do anything. So how did you deal with that in a practical manner? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Waswa. Peter, if you can bring your microphone to the front.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to start by appreciating Mr. Julius Kaketo for the outstanding presentation, and to appreciate Prudential, to appreciate everyone that was part of this. We really do appreciate it as the HR practitioners. My name is Lydia Nsibambi Mlondo, and I'm the head of human resource at Uganda Revenue Authority. Mine are quick ones. The first one is I felt that when we are looking at the future of HR, then we have to look at risk management, like human capital risk. And I felt like it's critical for us to look at issues like intellectual capital retention. We've talked about developing talent, which is very good. But how do we ensure that we retain that tacit knowledge that we're building? So if we could have some points from up there, because it's a critical issue that's eluding us. We are building capacity. People have a lot of exposure, experience. You've developed capacity. And then the person leaves. And then you feel like you're going back to scratch. So how do you ensure, as part of knowledge management, that there's intellectual capital retention so that you're harnessing and then retaining the knowledge? The other issue is I wanted to really raised the issue about leadership. He touched on it a lot, about building the HR managers. And I wanted to say that as HR practitioners, that it's critical for us to build the capability of our leadership. For us not to be the ones as HR experts always driving the programs, but building the capacity of our leadership to be able to handle these HR issues. Because it's critical that once you have these programs as leadership driven, then you're certain to be able to harness and to attain as an organization. So I wanted also some, if anyone has how they're driving it, to ensure that we have a leadership driven for all our programs that we are focusing on as HR, so that they're leader driven. You're talking about culture transformation, and you ensure that it's leadership driven. You talk about all the aspects of the programs and initiatives that you want to run, and that they're leadership driven. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Final question from that table, and then I'll come to you, panelists, to respond.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My question is to Uthman, maybe. My name is Frank Fayo. I'm a CEO at Hedge Marketing. Hedge is a marketing company. How do you deal with your employees' mental health issues, especially post-COVID?
Okay, thank you, Frank. And before I come back to the panelists, just remind you that there's a feedback form within your folders. It looks like that. Just take some time and complete it. It's important for us because then it will help us shape what's going to be included within the survey. So if you can, it won't take you more than 2 minutes, I promise. Make sure you don't leave without completing it. Okay, so coming back to our questions and comments from our lovely audience, I think there were a few that were specifically put to Julius, some that were put to Grace, and then to Uthman. So Julius, if you could speak to the question of work politics. You can also comment on the issue from Paul around employee value proposition. Uthman, you can speak to occupational hazards and mental health in particular, which was addressed to you. And then Grace, you can speak to program exchange, but you can, program exchange. And I think the two questions from Lydia, both Uthman and Julius can comment around intellectual capital retention, as well as building leadership capabilities. So I'll give you, I hope 2 minutes are good for each of you so we can close, because I would like us to close by 10:30. Julius, we can start with you, then Grace, and then Uthman.
Thank you very much. On the issue of, maybe let me start with the politics. The way I say politics, it is just, whenever you have two people in a room, you have politics. If you have very many people in a room in a conversation, you have politics. It is a constant that you can't do away with. And my advice to, I think it was Moses, is you have to figure out how to deal with issues. Everywhere there is politics. I work in a bank that has a lot of politics, even until today. And you have to navigate the politics. You need to be very consistent with your decision making. Extremely consistent. And I'll tell you, if you are head of HR and there are 3 managers who have brought CVs and you give one, you don't give the other 2, they'll be on your case. Because they'll say, but you gave so and so, me you haven't. You see, now you're being entangled into the politics. You have to be extremely consistent in terms of how you deal with the politics. And your boss should be able to cover you in terms of if you find the politics is actually damaging. You must be a very good influencer, because a lot of decisions are around influencing. You must learn the art of influencing people to see what you see, open their eyes. Otherwise, you'll end up hiring the wrong people or making wrong placements, and you affect your own business just because of the politics. So don't get swallowed in the politics. It is always there. You can navigate and be above it. In terms of employee value proposition, I believe it starts with the business. As human resource, you must appreciate and know your business. Like I said, you must know what success means to that organization. and what they are trying to achieve. At a top level, I would call it a helicopter view of your business. Once you have that, and you are aligned with the rest of your colleagues in terms of what you're trying to achieve, it will help you develop the right employee value proposition. It will help you determine what you're looking for and what you're trying to achieve in the long term. Sustainability. So it will influence a lot of your decisions around hiring and targeting. And like Uthman said, not everyone wants to work for your organization. You may find there are very few people who want to work for your organization. And it is worse if you don't know the type of prospects you are looking for. Because if you haven't defined them to a certain extent, then how will you attract them? So you must define first, and then try to see how you can attract. And once you bring them on, and that's why I said talent management is very key, you must retain. Part of retention, a lot of retention is not money. A lot of retention can be growth, can be the camaraderie in the organization, can be the life, the wellness. There are so many factors that actually drive retention in an organization. So it is very important that you have the full package as HR. You align to the business, you know what the business needs. You define exactly what you are looking for, and then you create the environment that can retain. And those policies, at times it's a bit expensive to retain. You do your best to retain. I'll give you an example. We have a graduate trainee program, but and it was born out of the fact that we were struggling initially. Postbank brand wasn't attracting. We would even advertise jobs internally and there's no application. And I found that very strange. So we are not attracting what we had defined that we want to join the organization. So we said, let us go down to the ground, develop a talent management program. And URI, I think, has been one of the biggest beneficiaries because they came and swept a lot of these people on the program. But I said that means we are doing something right. If other organizations that are bigger than us are interested in these people. So we just have to figure out how much retention can we make to make sure that at least we, at the start of the program, I was telling HR that if after 5 years we have 40% of these people in the program, and they last 5 years, 40%, that is a D1. That is very good success, because I expect 60% to leave. So, but you have to continue, and over time, you create that culture of that. You're managing talent and grooming talent, identifying, developing, and retaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I first comment about reward? That question, I just wanted to add to that because it's very close to my heart. When I joined Unilever, I was fresh out of school as a graduate trainee, and I got my offer letter, and it was exciting. The offer was 800,000 at that time. Don't ask my age. And then we went for induction in Kenya. We had been recruited as a group cohort. And my colleagues were earning double. Joining the same day, they were earning double the salary. And I think that's when I first woke up. I was like, okay. But we were there with Ethiopians and Tanzanians. Tanzanians were earning 30% more than us. Ethiopians were earning 50% more than we were earning. And I started asking myself, what is it? As a country, is it that we don't have good talent? Is it that we're not competent? But we all went through the same rigorous interview. I went to Nairobi for that interview, and we were interviewed by the East African Board. So we all qualified. We were all at the same level. Do you understand? So why was I earning half of my colleagues? Now, you're the HR community. You have an association. You have an organization. Please, can I ask that you do something about some of these things? You have the power. If you need us to lobby for you to support you as Private Sector Foundation, because we have an advocacy arm, we can. But please, can you improve the earnings of our Ugandans, including yourselves? Because I'm sure you also feel the pinch, especially for those who have regional or multinational employers. I just felt that we were always on the back foot as Ugandans and yet expected to deliver the same results. And you can find creative ways. When I asked, I was told the cost of food here is so low, rent is affordable. You know the things that HR says. So my peers in Kenya were progressive, investing in shares. We couldn't save as much as they could. I think for me, I've come more with questions than answers for the HR community and asks, but I'm also offering as private sector foundation to work with you, which brings me to the question that my friend asked about exchange programs. I think before we even started thinking about exchange programs as private sector foundation, we were looking at the unemployment rates and how we can fix that, how we can upskill our people, our talent here, so that they can actually get jobs can get jobs locally within even Uganda. One of the programs, we have two programs actually. One of them is the one I talked about, the SG Plus, the Skills and Governance, where we are placing 1,000 Ugandans, fresh graduates, in businesses. So we've got a partnership with the EU where we're saying we'll pay your salary for the first 6 months. If you prove yourself and your employer loves you so much, then they can take you on after that. But it's giving young people a chance at employment. So if you have opportunities and have seen the adverts, please get in touch with us. We are looking to place 1,000 Ugandans and guaranteeing payment for the first 6 months, but after that, you take them on. The other one is with the MasterCard Foundation, where we are creating employment for the youth. And this one we're being intentional. Actually, our target is to get employment for 70% young women. And it's very challenging, especially when you go up country. I'm looking at the women, and the head of the home is saying, but my heir is a male. Why are you taking the female and not taking the male? But that is our target, and we are also having conversations. We're also recruiting the males. But our first priority was to create employment. And you've seen the young people that are leaving, the future employees who are leaving for the Arab world because there's no employment. Our burning platform was making sure that we unlock employment opportunities, which would mean that we grow the economy and create jobs. But having said that, one of the initiatives that we've lately started rolling out is the trade development. And we are riding on this whole Africa Free Continental Trade Area campaign. Borders are open across the 54 countries in Africa. We are having commercial diplomacy conversations with ambassadors, with heads of states, so that our talent can move across the continent and find opportunities elsewhere. We recently took our business community to Congo. We were in Southern Sudan. We met the Somalia delegation. We've started at an Africa level, but next month we will have a business summit in Dubai. We're looking for opportunities and also looking to partner with the private sector bodies in those countries so that we can be able, I think that's homework we'll take away, so that we can be able to engage when we get to that point of can we exchange talent. But first we need to build the infrastructure for that.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thanks, Grace. Uthman, if you can make the final remarks from the panelists. I hope you'll touch the subject of intellectual capital retention and leadership capabilities as well.
Thank you. I see those were nicely avoided. Thank you. Very quickly, because of time, the question on occupational hazards, influence, undue influence, for me, what I'd add to Julius's comment is to say, make sure that your organization has clear policies. If there are gaps in your policies around hiring and so on and so forth, make sure that as head of HR, that you strengthen those policies, and that will get you out of trouble. The organization needs to be transparent, as has been mentioned, because it doesn't pay to peddle influence in any way, shape, or form. On the issue of mental health, it's a very important subject, generally speaking, and you'll see that well-being is a big part of the survey. And I think as HR practitioners, my appeal would be to say, make this part and parcel of your agenda and your work plan. and of the things that you're monitoring in an organization. Have conversations about well-being. The approach that we take is that from time to time we invite well-being specialists to speak to our people. Sometimes you don't know that you're not okay. Particularly if you're not okay in your head, how are you going to know that you're not okay? And if you want to know that, go and visit Butabika and ask them, why are you here? It's like prison. Nobody will say they're there because they committed a crime. So we need to speak to people about this. Avail mental health and well-being specialists to our employees, to our workforce, so that people know that they can speak to a counselor, to a therapist, provide access to them as part of your medical health program or your medical program in the organization, and let people know that it's actually okay to want to speak to a counselor, to a therapist, to a psychotherapist, to a psychiatrist, whatever it is. And obviously break down the barriers and the stigma associated with mental health in the organizations. I think those are the few comments I can make. Obviously, don't forget yourself as the mentor, as the HR practitioners. Around EVP, the point I want to add on EVP is to say, maybe I'll come back to that a little bit in a second. For intellectual property, it's an interesting one, but it's ultimately a legal question that has to be understood to say, what I create whilst I'm working for you, using your tools, using your methodologies, who does it belong to? It needs to be very clear that it belongs to the organization. In a highly skilled environment, obviously, if I work on a model, if I work on a new tax framework for URA, for example, it means that when I leave URA, I still carry that experience, and I'll always be able to leverage it. What I mustn't do is to go and take that document and remove the name for Uganda Revenue Authority and put X Revenue Authority and say, here, guys, I've done this for you. That's unethical, and that's what our people need to understand. So I think the lines can be drawn. Again, policies need to be drawn, and people need to be informed and taught about these policies so that they understand where the line is drawn. In a gig economy where people are coming in and out, that is the biggest challenge. So if today I'm working for PwC and tomorrow I'm working for a competitor for PwC and then I'm back at PwC, what am I sharing in between? So understanding that and educating people about that is obviously also going to be very important. Otherwise, we create barriers for the kind of mobility that the workforce needs. Leadership development, I think Julius made the point very well. The challenge we have is the theory of returns and marginal returns we learn in economics, to say every time you start off something, you start very low, you learn, your productivity improves, and then you tail off. Now, if you don't start learning again, you're going to start dropping. So you have to start learning again. The trouble with leadership is that we learn, we grow into leadership positions by being very good at a particular competence, sales, marketing, HR. We get to the top of the organization. As we become more experienced, we need to see the wider view of the organization. Okay? Our training programs are not very good at that lateral view. They are very good at a vertical view that says, you're now a manager in finance. This is what you need to know. You're now a manager in IT. This is what you need to know. Beyond that, we're not very supportive. So organizations, the challenge for HR is to say, how do we continue to develop everybody, including the CEO? How do we continue to develop everybody and cater to their needs so that they see the organization and are able to deliver on their mandate consistently and to continuously be able to lift their own game? I think with the time available, that's where I would end my comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Uthman, Grace, Julius. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure we've done this topic justice. We could talk all day and still not exhaust HR matters. We are closing the conversation within the walls of this room, but let it continue outside the walls. So allow me to hand it back to Prudential and to thank you for your participation.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Pam. I think we've come to the tail end of this particular session. And so before we call it a day, I know you have a long day of what HR people do ahead of you. I'd like to invite Tete to give the closing remarks. Please do not forget to fill out that form at the back of that document. We just need your feedback, and we will be looking forward to hearing from you again very soon. So over to you, Tete.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, our panelists, Julius, Uthman, Sfer. It's been great hearing you speak. My task here is very simple. It's to say thank you to all of you for coming. My remarks in wrapping up are very limited. I think we've listened to all the panelists. They've made very interesting submissions. Thank you, Fred from Umeme. The points made have been well noted. I think that we need to rethink how we do the ranking. But most important, what you did for us, Fred, was to actualize the reason for this platform. We set this platform to get together, to have a conversation, and to understand what you want us to do, and then what things you want us to pay attention to once we look at this new survey. And walking away from this, I think I'm extremely happy. The input from Julius, from Uthman have been fantastic. From all of you here have been great. I walk away knowing that there are emerging trends and themes that we need to inculcate into the new survey, and I'm very excited about that. Most importantly is to look out for the upcoming survey information. I think there will be the launch very soon, but would also communicate to you via the usual channels the content of the survey, and I look forward to that. I think our participation will be heightened once we get to the point where we start seeing what the results are and whether we can identify any, like I said, emerging trends and themes. Let the conversation not end now. As we exit this stage, may we together have a lot more of these conversations, and let's document them so we can walk away with the learnings that will be very useful for us as we go through this exercise. It was very interesting when Julius was talking about what big data is doing now. And I look at our own experience where HR is transitioning into an app on our phones. What it means is that all those processes and code that HR used to excite themselves with is changing, and we'll definitely have to redefine ourselves in terms of how we engage with the organization and our employees to deliver value and ensure that we achieve the ultimate objectives of the organization. So thank you for coming. We're pleased to have had you. Please let the conversations continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tate. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Mr. Kaketo. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Uthman. And I would like to wish you all a lovely day.
We all share the same destination. We all work together as one. Oh, in this place there's only one vision, and that's to be the number one. We all have number one combination. Number one care and quality. There's no compromise. Number one. Doing the very best will be our mission. Number one. It is something number one to realize. It is something that is special in our eyes. We are Prudential. Our values mean a lot. We are the people who give it all we've got. With a solid disposition, we can overcome the odds. Yes, we have a valid reason to believe. We are number one. Ah, we are number one. Ah, take one more step, reach out for excellence. We'll do whatever it takes to touch the sky, and we'll help each other reach our aspirations. We know that we can do it if we strive. We are Prudential. Our values mean a lot. We are the people who give it all we've got. With a solid disposition, we can overcome the odds. Yes, we have a valid reason to believe.